So I want to ask the four of you, I mean, as you're out in the field when you're talking to either clients or other experts, what are some big trends that everyone's talking about? Is it machine learning, social collaboration, Internet of Things, or and take your pick on how you want to answer the question. Is there a sense of disenchantment out there? I pick up this a little bit. People go like, well, big data, it's a lot of buzz, it's a lot of money, we're not really getting much from it, we're kind of tired of the whole idea. Do you hear any of that, or what do you hear when you're talking to experts out there? Joelle, what's your sense of that? What's big out there today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there is a challenge among the business users, the so what challenge, the what do I know and why is it so hard? They hear about data and big data and having lots of data, but they're not easily able to make better decisions. And at the end of the day, they don't care about algorithms and they don't care about volumes of data. They care about making decisions that drive their business and making decisions that are predictive. And so we hear people really clamoring for answers rather than data. Mm-hmm. And I think the Internet of Things, beacons, are increasing the volume of data. And what is challenging to keep up is what is that data telling me to do differently, and do I believe it?
You use the term beacons. Is that? I mean, I don't hear that much. Tell me about beacons.
Well, beacons, and maybe it's because we do a lot in the e-commerce, but beacons is the ability to know where somebody is in a physical store while they're on their phone, and then use that information to create a more compelling physical experience. If you think about it, the first wearable is the phone, right? That I'm wearing it on my person. Right. I walk into any sort of business, and if there is something about where I'm standing and what I'm doing on the phone that can give me a better experience or give your sales associate a better experience, companies want to do that, but it's very hard to actually get all of that data, and it's so big, and synthesize it to precisely what will have the best impact right now. And that's what business people care about. What do I need to do today, tomorrow, to grow and maximize my business? What's historical is only moderately interesting if it doesn't tell me what to do tomorrow.
Right. Arjit, what are you hearing when you talk to clients or other business experts about big data? What are the big topics that is on everyone's mind these days?
Yeah, so I would have to agree with the previous speaker, because the problem is with the term big data. We are focusing on data, the size of the data, rather than what you're doing with the data. So it's like, and by the way, I see Richard up on screen while I'm speaking, so there's something interesting going on there.
I see you up on screen, but okay. Anyways, yeah.
But part of the issue here is it's about, as she said, the insights you can glean from the data. Bragging about big data is like bragging about how much junk you have in the attic, right? It's not about how much data you store, it's what you've done with it. And this is precisely why a lot of companies are getting into trouble now, where they've spent tens of millions into building infrastructure for big data. But you go and ask them, how many millions of dollars did you impact your profit by or your revenue by? Forget about billions. They can't even come up with numbers in the millions because they haven't tracked it. The next phase is going to be all about how do I deliver several $1 million of quantified ROI in a matter of hours and days. If you can do that, you will succeed. If you can't, you're just throwing stuff into an attic.
Richard, what do you hear out there? I mean, is there a talk about the cloud-based BI? I hear buzz about that, and we had talked about that a little bit. Is that hot these days? Cloud-based versus on-premise?
I'm certainly going to echo one of Joel's comments that people don't want to hear about algorithms, and they're not interested in k-means clustering and things like that. Where they get excited is when you talk to them about practical applications, such as is it possible to cluster negative sentiment that you're picking up from tweets and comparing that against the response time and infrastructure issues with a large web-based presence.
Is it possible to do that?
It is possible to do that, yes, using natural language processing.
Okay.
The other trend that I'm noticing is we get a lot of questions when we talk about this kind of technology to people. A lot of questions are, where should I do this processing? Is this something I should do on-premise, or is this something that should be done in the cloud?
Mm-hmm.
The answer, of course, is actually very simple.
What is your answer to that, if it's a simple answer?
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that question? It seems like it would come down to dollars and cents, but what's your what is your nutshell answer to that one?
The answer will change over the next few years, but right now the quick answer is you process the data where the data is today. So try and avoid moving it around too much is the answer.
So if I can add on that, I think it depends on what kind of data you're processing. And are you, in our case, we're collecting and using data from 75 million consumers across hundreds of sites. And when you get insights from our Compass product, you're benefiting from the algorithms being tuned by data of that magnitude. There's no way to get that on-premise.
So Joel, your sense of the cloud versus on-prem, you're leaning heavily towards the remote part of that answer.
Well, no, I think that Richard's answer is accurate. You don't want to move data around. This is big, massive, and there's issues there. But it depends on what data you're using and what question you're trying to answer. If you can answer the question with the data you have yourself in your locations, great for you. Do it there.
Right.
But to answer the question, you need data that comes from beyond you. Then the on-premise is a non-starter. You're going to have to be dealing with the cloud.
Right.
I actually think there's a very strange black and white thing we're talking about here. You don't have to suck the elephant through the straw into the cloud to analyze it. There are modern techniques now, and I'm surprised nobody's bringing this up, where you can do statistical measurements where the data is, move those statistical profiles to the cloud, and these statistical profiles are typically 100th to 1,000 the size of the data, and then do secondary analysis. You may even have some of the data on-prem, some of the data on the cloud, and you combine it on the cloud. The key point here is don't try to move the elephant through the straw, measure the elephant, and move the measurements through the straw. And it can be a both answer. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I agree. Don't put elephants through straws or doorways or anything like that. I think that depending on the problem you're trying to solve, and can the machine learning happen just off of statistical samples, or does it need data in order to generate the actual statistical accuracy?
I didn't say statistical samples. You wouldn't want to do samples in a big data context. I said statistical profiles. So you still look at every row and every column of data, but you look at how the data behaves rather than what the data says. And you can usually express how data behaves in mathematical models without having to move the whole data over.
Mike, what's your sense of how to access the elephant? I mean, do you need to bring him where you are, or can you access them remotely, or in a larger sense, what do you hear when you talk to clients and experts out there?
Yeah, so I think there's many different aspects to big data that we're looking at. Obviously, we've had discussion here perhaps on some vertical applications. In the broader enterprise IT sense, I think people have lots of different kinds of data. Big data has definitely gotten overhyped in a certain way, and I think that was a failure of people to go out and try to sell big data as having one key killer application that you had to build these huge clusters for. And what we're seeing lately are, I would say, a segmentation of the big data space down into practical solutions. So one of those might be hosting on-premise a virtualized version of Hadoop where I can look at spin up different clusters very quickly and look at different subsets of data very fast and do that department by department. Or I can go to a cloud and spin up a cluster and bring that down very fast and look at that. Another one might be different ways of storing the data. You said not to move the data around very much. We're seeing people now being able to process their data in a big data way in place on their traditional storage arrays. Again, maybe using some virtualization or remote access to their the place where the data already lives without having to actually move it into a big data special storage cluster. And this is talking about people's own data. certainly when you then combine it with data outside, there are other considerations about moving data around and where does the processing take place. So I think there's a lot of change happening in the big data space. I also haven't heard anybody talk about a trend we're seeing with moving towards a more real-time operational intelligence kind of focus. Maybe Joel mentioned this a little bit, where instead of a couple of years ago we were talking about big data in a almost as a replacement for data warehousing and business intelligence. Now we're talking about it in terms of operational intelligence, where we want to pull data out in a more streaming, real-time way and do it very, very quickly and effectively to impact what I'm doing right now, and not what I might be doing, what I did 3 days ago. So I guess that does echo some of the things we heard.
Yeah, I would have to completely agree.
Go ahead, Richard. Yeah.
IT operations, we live and breathe in the real-time operations world, so processing time is measured in milliseconds and seconds for us, and it is our goal to provide actionable data to individuals in near real time as possible. So it's the real-time sliding window view. We're finding that the traditional big data approach of filling a very large data lake and then doing some forensic analysis, the folks we're talking to don't have that luxury. They need information in near real time so they can take actions, or head off disasters and make appropriate sort of changes to try and realize the dream of autonomic networks. So real-time processing is the key here, and we also agree. I think it's a 3 to 5 year time frame, but there's going to be more processing done at the perimeter and less centralized data warehousing, which is, I guess, the current trend.
Right.
So if I can talk to this issue of putting the decision making, one of our products deals with digital merchandisers, and they're not. They want to be very data driven. There isn't a lot of centralized, aggregated data for them. They're not BI people, and one of our clients told us, and this is a positive big data story, that during the week of Cyber Monday, Black Friday,
right.
Terrific Thursday, that traditionally it took them 4 weeks to collect all the data to understand what was happening and what worked and what didn't. But because they were using a big data-driven solution, happens to be in the cloud, but their access to it, they're going right through their browser. Their digital merchandisers were able to see and make changes in real time to improve their performance in that incredibly important week of sales. And for them, not only was it positive to their business performance, but the actual people felt considerably better about their jobs because they had the information from which to make better decisions in the time frame it mattered, which I think echoes Richard's point of view. But rather than on the IT side, this is on the actual end user digital merchants.
It's sort of like the democratization of big data, where maybe it's only the C-suite, but what you're talking about is perhaps a lower rank of people can access it, or maybe it's a faster process.
Oh no, it's not C-suite. This is really designed for the operator, the person who's got to make the decisions about what's going to be in what position on this page, what's going to be promoted, what's going to be demoted, and what are we going to stop doing. So it's very much, there's a whole business theory of you want the decisions to be made by the person closest to the information to make the decisions. And done well, if you can use big data, algorithms, whatever, and bring the right information to the right person in the moment they need to make a decision, then you can track very dramatic, measurable impacts on the business and very emotionally positive impacts on the person.